Hello there! In this video, I'll be going through a timeline of some of the most important art movements in history, as well as some of their characteristics. There are many forms of art, but we're going to focus on the visual ones, especially paintings. And what better way to start a timeline than by what is probably the most famous painting of all times, the Mona Lisa. This iconic artwork was created by Da Vinci during the Renaissance period, which means rebirth, and it was characterized by introducing depth in the painting, since the medieval artworks that came before this period were all too flat and had little sense of dimension. Oil paint allowed the artist to create many more complexities, and using this medium on canvas also means that the paint can be much more manipulated by the artist, so they could transform a two-dimensional surface into a three-dimensional picture. The good use of perception, light, and shadows was important for the illusion of depth as well, since they emphasize the main object of the painting and draw your eyes to it. After the Renaissance came the Baroque, which used exaggerated motion and clear, easily interpreted details to produce drama and tension. The Catholic Church encouraged the popularity and success of the Baroque style, and the aristocracy viewed the dramatic style of the Baroque art and architecture as a means of impressing visitors by projecting triumph, power, and control. The Baroque contains dramatic contrast between light and shadow, and it tries to draw the viewer to participate in the scene. Then came the Neoclassicism. The characteristics of neoclassical art include a concentration on Greek and Roman mythology and history for subjects, somewhat dramatic lighting, and a rather clean style with hard edges and bright primary colors. Artists sought to faithfully reproduce the architecture and clothing of ancient times, showing reverence for the traditional artistic ideals. Romanticism was characterized by its emphasis on emotion, individualism, and the glorification of all the past and nature. Romantic art can have dark style, showing a preference for the mysterious. Some artists also use the occult and the satanic as a regular feature in their works. Many artists painted pieces of art that were portraits of royalty or moments that captured the spirits of nationality. Realism is broadly considered the beginning of modern art, due to its conviction that everyday life and the modern world were suitable subjects for art. Realism in the arts is the attempt to represent subject matter truthfully, without artificiality and avoiding artistic conventions, exotic and supernatural elements. Realist works of art may emphasize the mundane, ugly, or sordid, and French artists initially used realism to sarcastically depict political issues. Now let's talk about one of my favorites, Impressionism. Distinctive brush strokes are one of the main characteristics of Impressionist art. Painters used rapid, spontaneous, loose, large, and visible brush strokes. These techniques separated them from the traditional painting style, which demanded invisible brush strokes to make the painting look lifelike. Lighting and the sense of movement were focal points of the Impressionist art movement. Impressionist painters usually separate the colors, allowing viewers' perception to mix them. A few years later, another art movement emerged as a reaction against Impressionists' concern for the naturalistic depiction of light and color, the Post-Impressionism. Post-Impressionists extended Impressionism while rejecting its limitations. They continued using vivid colors and often thick application of paint, but were more inclined to emphasize symbolic content and the use of unnatural colors. Post-Impressionists believed color could be free from form and composition, as an emotion and aesthetic bearer of meaning. And then Fauvism took this idea of separating color from its representational purpose even further, allowing it to exist on the canvas as an independent element. Above all, Fauvism valued individual expression. The artist's direct experience of their subjects, their emotional response to nature, and their intuition were all more important than academic theory or elevated subject matter. and the arrival of Expressionism announced that as new standards in the creation and judgment of art. Art was now meant to come forth from within the artist, rather than a depiction of the external visual world. Paintings are distorted radically for emotional effect in order to evoke moods or ideas rather than being faithful to physical reality. And then Cubist artists abandoned perspective, which had been used to depict space since the Renaissance, and they also turned far away from the realistic modeling of figures. Cubists explored open form, piercing figures and objects by letting the space flow through them, blending background into the foreground, and showing objects from various angles. These innovations may represent a response to the changing experience of space, movement, and time in the modern world. Developed in reaction to World War I, the Dadaism movement consisted of artists who rejected the logic, reason, and style of modern capitalist society, instead expressing nonsense, irrationality, and anti-capitalist protest in their works. Dada artists are known for their use of ready-made objects, which are everyday objects that are represented as art with little manipulation by the artist. Using the ready-made force questions about artistic creativity and the definition of art and its purpose in society. The Surrealists sought to channel the unconscious to unlock the power of imagination. The work of Sigmund Freud was profoundly influential for Surrealists, particularly his book, The Interpretation of Dreams, published in 1899. His exposure of the complex and repressed inner worlds of sexuality, desire, and violence provided a theoretical basis for much of Surrealism. Surrealists really like to put together things that are not normally seen together, like a lobster and a telephone. Dali once said, "I do not understand why, when I ask for a grilled lobster in a restaurant, I am never served a cooked telephone." Are you confused? Don't worry, we all are as well. Despite its name, abstract expressionism was neither wholly abstract nor expressionist, and comprised several different styles. What united them in one art movement was an intention to redefine the nature of painting. Born out of profound emotion and universal themes, the most were shaped by the legacy of Surrealism. In their success, these New York painters robbed Paris from its mantle of leader of modern art and set the stage for America's dominance for the international art world. Pop art. The movement presented a challenge to traditions of fine art by including imagery from popular and mass cultures, such as advertising, comic books, and mundane cultural objects. In pop art, the material is sometimes visually removed from its known context, isolated, and combined with unrelated material. And then we have photorealism. Photorealism is a genre of art that encompasses painting, drawing, and other graphic media, in which an artist studies a photograph and then attempts to reproduce the image as realistically as possible in another medium. These are just some of the art movements. There are many more throughout history and yet to come. And technology is introducing many more means to produce art. Nowadays, we are able to create illustrations using digital devices, such as iPads. We can push perspective to its farthest using virtual reality, or even print a three-dimensional object using a 3D printer. All of these are great opportunities for new artists to experiment with art's limits, and that makes me really excited to see what the future beholds regarding art. Thank you for watching.